Yes, 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 yes. Would you believe it, people? If you're here in the live, if you're watching this, maybe tomorrow morning, later tonight, whilst the Barbados St. Kitts game is going on, what we're about to do tonight, this idea only came to fruition no, that's a lie. It came to fruition 24 hours ago, but to actually do it, we only made the decision 1 hour ago that we were going to do this as a regular show. My name's Machel Hewitt. I'm one half of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. And tonight, and probably every night from now till the end of CPL, we present a brand new show for you. Late nights at Warner Park. It's Hero CPL 2021. We're going in this year on the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. Every episode, I'll bring in a guest. It could be the same guest. It might not be. Who knows? But every episode, there'll be a different guest just talking about the events of CPL that day or so on and so forth. But before I introduce the guest who, if you're with us, you should already know, smash that subscribe button, smash that like button. And also our guest, in the description underneath the video, you'll see I've put a link to his Twitter page. Go follow him because the great statistician himself, Static, he's back in the house. He's back with Caribbean Cricket Podcast. I hope a lot of you are here because you've read his amazing article on Sunil Narayan. But Static, man, how you doing?
I'm good, man. How are you? Nice to be back.
Awesome to have you on. Awesome to have you on. There's so many cricket stats guys out there, but we at Caribbean Cricket Podcast, Static is the only one we champion over everybody else. You want your stats and you want your understanding of what's going on in cricket. And I'm going to say, Static, in particular, with regards to T20 cricket, you're the guy we got to go to. But for those who are locked in, and ICSCB, you know what? Here we go. One second. Let me bring him up. See, look at this. Big fan of Static, bro. All the Static guys are here. They heard Static was on and they were like, I got to be here. So let me explain the concept of today's show. And for those of you who are watching, you can see I've got my Jamaica flag around me. Because you see, when it's CPL, there's no neutrality here. Pure bias is going to go on. Certainly from me. And when Santoki comes back on, he's on holiday at the moment. When he comes back on, he's championing Guyana before anything else. What we're going to do on Late Nights at Warner Park is we're going to pick out 5 key talking points from the morning game and basically discuss them and go through them, and then briefly look ahead to the evening game, which obviously starts in about an hour or so. And today's one is obviously Barbados versus St. Kitts. But we're going to get straight into it. And if you're with us live, by all means, jump in, send in your comments and so on and so forth. But let's get straight into it. Talking point number 1. From today's game. And if you didn't see it, Guyana Amazon Warriors beat Trinbago Knight Riders by 9 runs. Somewhat of an upset. I think most people have Trinbago as the overall favourites for the competition. I certainly think Guyana are weaker than in previous editions, but the game didn't pan out like that. And that is the great format known as T20. Just because you might have a stronger team on paper doesn't necessarily mean you're always going to win a game. And to be honest, all things considered, Guyana were worthy winners. I think there were aspects of the game where Pollard and the TKR think camp will look back and go, but Guyana were worthy winners. But like I say, the format of how we're going to do this, people, is we're going to look at talking points. And Static, I'm going to come straight to you. I'll tee you up, and you're just gonna finish it off.
Cool.
Talking point number 1 for me, Static, was the track. Before CPL started, I would have had Warner Park down there. Certainly at the beginning, down as pure runs, loads and loads of runs. And then as the competition goes on, it's going to get slower, it's going to get lower because there's no other grounds to use. But today's track, all the players said it was a difficult track to bat on. The ball wasn't necessarily coming on easy to the bat. It was quite green. Jaden Seals, for example, got plenty of zip, pace and bounce off it first up. But then so did Odean Smith and so did Romario Shepherd. But then the spinners got some purchase. It kind of seemed to stick in the track, and players were unable to time it fluently. And in fact, when you look through the piece, the only batsman who looked at ease on it was Shimron Hetmyer, but we'll get to him. But Static, what do you think about the track?
Yeah, so if you look at the 2019 CPL, which was the last set of games actually played at Warner Park, we saw scores of 220, 240. I think there was this game where St. Kitts would have chased 240 against Jamaica.
Mm.
They were absolute run fest. So this is somewhat different. And I don't know if it's something to do with preparation or what's going on, because even in the West Indies Australia series, St. Lucia, which is usually one of the flattest tracks, was somewhat sticking. Grenada's the same thing. So I don't know what's the excuse this time, but it seemed like it was holding up for the spinners. It was zipping through for the seamers. It was just very difficult to bat on. And my hope is it flattens out under lights the next game.
Mm.
But early signs are it's probably going to slow down even more, which is probably not the best news for batsmen.
I'd argue it's not the best news for the tournament, because last year's I mean, we had 2 tracks last year in Trinidad, and as you just said there, they kind of slowed down even more so as we got through, and the games became, unless you're a proper CPL fan, the games became hard to watch because the pitches weren't allowing good cricket to take place. And so I'm like you, I was worried by the nature of how the deck played this morning, and it'll be interesting to see how true the pitch is tonight, as you say, under lights, because I'm not saying cricket must be a batsman's game, but your opening game of a tournament shouldn't have 140 as the high watermark for any competition.
No. And it's going to slow down because we're playing on the same ground. So, ideally we start high and we go down from there.
So I want to put some caution on us being I don't want us to be like hyperbolic about it, because let's see. Maybe that was just the first use on it, and players have to get their eye in and they have to understand how you play on these decks. But it was worrying to see no one really teeing off. Even Hetmyer, who played a good innings, when you consider the whole match, Hetmyer played a good innings, but he was timing it in the sense of finding gaps for ones and finding gaps for twos. But he wasn't fluent enough to be able to go for the big hits at will, so to speak. But we'll go into talking point number 2. And people in the comments, I do see your comments. Lots of you are saying the Talawars are dreadful. And I got my Jamaica flag on, and I agree. But because the Talawars aren't playing yet, I'm going to ignore those comments for now, even though you're right. I'm going to ignore those comments for now. But any questions you've got with whatever Static and I are saying, obviously do chuck them in, and I'll come to them. But Static, talking point number 2. What was that today? What was that? Now, my only brief comment before I set you up. I wasn't anti Odean Smith coming in. Odean Smith can hit a long ball, so I almost understood that. But when Odean, in fact, so Brandon King got out and they were still in the power play, and when Brandon King got out, who did they send in first? Was it?
They sent Odean first in.
No, but after Odean, they sent in.
After Odean, they sent in Hetmyer.
Oh, no, sorry. Yeah, good point. Sorry. Yeah. They sent in Hetmyer. Right. Okay. Sorry, people listening. They sent in Hetmyer. Fine. That made sense. But after Hetmyer, they sent in Malik. And at the time, I thought, okay, this makes sense because Odean Smith got out. And I was like, okay, this makes sense if the plan is that Malik's going to now anchor and Hetmyer is going to tee off. But Hetmyer had worked out that the pitch wasn't playing true. And Malik couldn't even put back to ball. And Malik was, when in T20s, when you almost want someone to stay in because they're they're almost losing the match for the team. So actually, when Malik got out for his 2 from 12 balls, I almost was like, TKR probably don't even want him out because he's not putting back to ball anyway. But then when Malik got out, they sent in Hafiz. And even if I could justify why Malik came in, I couldn't justify why Hafiz came before Pooran. You and I have spoken at length before, Static, about how Pooran is used in IPL, how Pooran should be used for West Indies. And you have always said to me, Pooran must come in at number 4 at the very latest. Why was he in at number 7 today? How are you going to get round that one for me?
So I won't say I was completely shocked because I was watching the pre-match and I saw Odean Smith padded up. But I thought he would come in as a pinch hitting opener or something like that. But then he ended up coming at the fall of the first wicket.
Mm.
So essentially what they did was clog up their top order when they already have like 6 top order batsmen. The initial team construction itself is somewhat flawed because they have what 3 or 4 anchors in their team.
Mm.
And then they pushed Puran all the way down. So it was just bizarre. I don't hate the fact that they sent Odean up because he has a lot of batting potential. He's a big hitter. I understand why they did
Mm-hmm.
that. But why did. Okay, even if you understand why Malik came in at that point, Hafiz is essentially playing the same role that Malik does, right?
Exactly.
So it didn't make any sense at all. Hetmyer was not teeing off, so ideally you want someone to come in, get some momentum into the game. And when Puran came in, there were no overs of spin remaining. So I think both Narayan and Akhil bowled 2 overs for 17 runs each.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's because Malik and Hafiz couldn't lay bat on spin.
Mm-hmm.
So if you send Puran up there to counter those 2 guys, you could have had Hafiz and Malik down there. It's not ideal because even they prefer batting at the top, but it's better because you're not giving them a choice to anchor. You're just telling them to tee off straight away. So
So Demo says here, he thinks they sent the right-handers for the shorter side. Any views on that?
yeah, so it makes sense because Hetmyer was a left-hander and he batted through the innings. But let's see what they do in the next game, right? Because it's not always going to be the case that Hetmyer anchors the innings through. If he's
Right.
dismissed early, do we see Puran promoting himself up in that case? So I kind of understand why they may have sent right-handers, but I think we'll get a clearer picture in the coming game.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting because Odean Smith came off, and I'm thinking back to that piece you wrote about Sunil Narayan and his batting. When you send someone like an Odean Smith up as a pinch batter, if I'm right in understanding what you wrote about Narayan, it's about value. If he gets out, it doesn't matter because, well, whatever, he was sent there to pinch it, and it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme if he gets out. But he got 24 or 15 balls, great value added in terms of the pinch hitting role. The problem is, I assume now Guyana say, well, we're just going to do that again. But that doesn't necessarily suit their batting order, if you catch my drift. So I'm hoping they only sent Odean out because Hemraj went early and they still wanted someone to exploit the power play in a kind of, there is, as I said, there is no negative value to sending someone like an Odean Smith. But as you said, why not open with him then? If you're gonna do that. But I think Guyana have some issues to sort out with their batting order. It's going to be fascinating to see how they sort this out for the next game. I would say, I don't know if you agree, Static, I would say they got away with it today, as opposed to it being the right thing to do.
Yeah, I think Hetmyer probably played one of his best CPL knocks because given that surface, he actually played very much a knock. So they probably got away with it. And regarding Odean Smith, I think teams are going to line him up as well. Today, TKR probably had no clue that was coming. But I think they have to keep some element of surprise. So maybe open with him one day, maybe push him down one day. All situation based, of course. And I don't hate the idea of pinch hitting, but probably maintain that element of surprise somewhere.
You mentioned Shimron Hetmyer, so the only batsman to look fluent in, and I even that word I use lightly, but the only batsman to approach looking fluent was Shimron. Shimron, in fact, there was a drop. He got dropped. No, because Simmons dropped him at one point.
When he was around 40,
Yeah, so Simmons did drop him in fairness, which allowed Shimron to then tee off against Jaden Seals at the very end. It wasn't Shimron's most fluent knock, but it was a crucial knock because he stayed through the innings and nobody else in the match was able to manage that on either side. How do you rate that knock today?
No, Shimron said this when he was playing Australia and he made that 64 or something. He said his role from now is to bat deep in the innings and then tee off at the end. And Shimron's often guilty of playing a shot in the air in the first 5 balls and getting out. So we know that, and he's probably trying to play more mature knocks now, try pace his innings better, because every time people come for Shimron's head because he plays reckless shots at the top. And I think he understands that. I think Phil Simmons and Kyle Pollard might have spoken to him about it at the West Indies as well. So it's nice that he's bringing it through in the CPL as well. Tricky pitch, he probably read that early, and he rotated strike against spin, and then probably saw that Jaden Seals and Ravi Rampal were probably having an off day at the death, so could actually get some runs away, especially against the seamers, because the ball wasn't coming on against spin. So I think he might have recognized all those things. So overall, it was a class knock. You might have thought strike rate of 130 at the halfway mark, probably missed out on a few runs, but if you look at it in hindsight, that was probably where they won the game, because no one else looked comfortable, as you said.
Yeah, and I think it's important. Shimron's knock. Obviously, there's lots of games to go in this tournament, but Shimron's going to the World Cup. That's not in any doubt whatsoever. And if Shimron does end up playing in the West Indies team, that knock he played today is probably going to be similar to the types of knocks they want Shimron to be playing for the West Indies. If that's with Gale in the team or if that's instead of Gale, whatever it might be, I think that's what they want Shimron to be doing as well for the West Indies. So good to see. In that sense,
yeah.
Contact. Go on. Sorry, go on.
Yeah. So Shimron, he started last CPL with a couple of 50s as well. But what happened is once he started looking like he could hit the ball, that's when he started playing reckless shots again. So because he's in form now, I don't want him to say, "Okay, I'm going to change this template of batting." I want him to stay steadfast, stick to this template for the rest of the tournament, and we know Shimron can pace his innings. He's made hundreds in ODIs. He probably has he had 5 ODI hundreds in his first 30 matches or something like that. That doesn't happen without having an idea of how to construct your innings. But I don't want Shimron to get overconfident now that he's looked in some kind of form and play reckless shots again.
Yeah, 100%. Contact. I'm just going to bring this point up because just to not that one. Although maybe that's the case. Just to say that we did discuss this at the start, Contact, and yes, I agree that we both said that the track's not good enough. So when this ends, watch back the start and you'll see what we said about the track and the pitches and so on and so forth. Point number 4, Odean Smith and Romario Shepherd. This is a brief one, Static. Odean Smith, I spoke to Dinesh Mahabir, who's a performance analyst, yesterday. That's for those who are watching, maybe are you this for the first time or who've never come across this before, you'll see that on our YouTube channel. And he said Odean Smith is a serious 2020 talent who hasn't fulfilled his potential yet. And today, fired at the top, fired with the ball. He is quick. I don't think people realize it, but he's super. In fact, he was the quickest bowler in the match today. And that's with Jaden Seals bowling in it. But also Romario Shepherd, who has looked awful probably for the last year. His progress, he's had negative progress for the last year. What did you think of both of those two with the ball?
No, this is actually a long time coming for Odean, because people might have seen him for the first time today, but he's actually been in the CPL since 2016, 2017. He had a contract with Jamaica. Then he moved to St. Lucia for a year, and now he's at Guyana for the last 3 years, I think. So it's actually a long time coming for Odean, because we know he can bat and he bowls quick as well. And I think his first over, he was probably losing control a little. He was bowling down leg, but then he corrected that quickly. I think that was very important, because he has potential. He can be a proper superstar down the order, and probably hasn't done that for quite a few years now. So it's good that he is coming into the mix. And Shepherd's probably pigeonholed as a death bowler, and he's been doing that for 2 or 3 years now for Guyana. It's a very tough role. So I think he got a slightly easier role today. He came in the power play, got to bowl the ball when there was still a little bit of swing, and then he was actually brought in when Kyle Pollard came in, and that was probably the wicket that sealed the innings. Because
yes, 100%. Yeah,
Ramden hit a couple of sixes, but he was never going to pull that off.
Yeah.
So Pollard was probably the game right there. So it's nice that he's stepping up into his role as well. I think we didn't see him bat for too many balls today, but I think he's actually worked on his batting a lot because we saw him in that New Zealand A.
Yeah.
He played a couple of first class games and I think he hit 100. So I think overall the package that these two guys bring in is very important because they have Niall Smith waiting for them on the bench.
Right.
He had a very good Super 50.
And I'm glad you said that, because when I saw the Guyana team, I was surprised Niall Smith wasn't in it.
Yeah.
And I think the name that shocked me was to see Odean Smith. Now, obviously, you have to assume that Guyana's plan was, well, Odean's going to be pinch hitting for us, so we have to have him in the team. But Niall Smith is in the hatch. Most of us want to see what Niall Smith's going to be doing, but based on that performance from the two, obviously Naveen Hat will always play. He's never getting dropped. So if Niall Smith is to come in, it would always be for one of these two. And they, based on this performance, haven't done anything to justify not being in the team for the second game. So impressive from them both. But and Contact, you've just said it here. Contact's just said it felt to me like TKR were one batter short. They had a seriously long tail. Now that's interesting, Contact, because our fifth and final talking point from this morning, and Static and I were discussing it before we went live. I said to Static, did Guyana win this game or did TKR lose this game? And I didn't just write this, Contact. I wrote this before we went live. Is their batting too light? Dana is coming in at 8. I'm
but
even
that's because Narayan's pinching. So
sorry.
That's because Narayan's pinching.
Yeah, of course, because Narayan is pinching him. But do you know what? This is harsh, but I mean, I'm even including Ramdin as part of the tail, which is obviously some of you are going to be like, "What do you mean Ramdin's part of the tail?" When I say Ramdin's part of the tail, I mean that Ramdin's not gonna coming in at 6 or 7. He's not gonna be able to finish a game for TKR. He's going to do exactly what he did today. He'll be able to be. He's someone you can bat around, but you don't want Ramdin in a situation where, it's 40 off 20 and it's Ramdin and some tail enders, or if you want to call Udana an all-rounder, call him an all-rounder. And I hope you get where I'm coming from, Static, because in that sense, with Ramdin in the team, I actually think their batting stops at Pollard. If Pollard should ideally be ahead of Ramdin, it was understandable why Ramdin came before Pollard today. But in normal scenarios, Pollard would go ahead of Ramdin. And I actually think once Pollard's in, that's it. The batting's over. Is that harsh?
I think we will look at it in terms of batting quality and not batting depth. Because if you look at depth, they have Udana at 8. They have Akil Hussain, a couple of 6s at 9. So I don't think it's a problem with depth as such, but they have Narayan pitching at the top, and like you said, Ramdin at 6 probably offers 0 value. Udana hasn't been in good batting form for a while now, so their core is essentially Simmons has to bat through the power play, get them off to a good start, and then Munro sets it up for Pollard at the back end. That almost has to happen. I don't think Seifert's been in good form for a while either. He had an awful CPL last year. I'm actually surprised they signed him again. So, it's essentially 3 guys. Simmons, Munro, Pollard have to almost handle each of their phases by themselves because they probably don't have anyone to support them either.
Now, there was an interesting moment in this match, Static, because Sunil managed to get through the power play, right? So when it got to the end of the power play, because Trinidad or Trimbago were actually ahead of the game. At the end of the power play, they were 50 for 2, and they were well ahead of the game at that point. And I remembered, I wrote it down on my notepad. I was like, "Who was in?" It might have been it was Bravo. It was Bravo and Narayan, I think.
Yeah.
And I remembered looking at the situation, going, Narayan only knows how to pinch it in the power play. But once you're out of the power play and Narayan's still there, can he add any value at that point?
In theory, he can because he's very good against spin, as we know. He can hit 6s against spin. So, in theory, he can. But I think, again, it's a case of Munro and Simmons playing poor shots at the top. All they had to do was let Narayan do the hitting and they bat through, which is actually uncharacteristic for Munro because if you look at CPL Munro, Trinbago Munro, he's someone who likes to bat deep. But today, I think he went back to his usual style, try last every ball for 6. And Simmons' shot was uncharacteristic too because usually his role is to turn it over to Narayan, let Narayan deal with the power play,
Yeah.
and then the other guys start coming in doing their thing. So when Narayan loses a couple of wickets at the other end, he's not going to know how to pace his innings from there on.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
that's what I'm getting at. They almost even though they were in a good position by the end of the power play, they had the wrong players in to take advantage of it. So they didn't. It's weird, and this is why I think sometimes people have to understand the dynamics of playing a T20 innings as a team, because there's no point in your side being 50 for 2 if the players you then have after it are Bravo and Narayan, because that's the wrong players at that phase of the game to take advantage of that situation. One of Munro and or Simmons still has to be there, surely, to set up the next phase of what. And I think if one of them had survived that power play, I think TKR would have been in a different position altogether to go on and win the game. Or have I analysed that wrong?
No, because like you said, they were 50 for 2 or whatever in the power play, and the moment they got out of it, you knew Tahir was coming on, you know Ashmead Ned was coming on. They have these bowlers who could turn the ball in every possible direction, so they could set up whatever matchup they wanted. And at that point, you knew the game was Pollard or nothing. So, yeah, I think TKR probably have to sort that out because it's not going to be a cakewalk for them if teams recognize that they have problems sending in the right guys at the right time.
Yeah, 100%. Ladies and gents, those who are live in the chat, and obviously some of you will watch this back maybe tomorrow or as the Barbados game is going on. But the last thing we're going to do, because we want to keep these short and sweet and try wrap them up in half an hour, it will go slightly over today, is just briefly look ahead. Now, if you end up watching this tomorrow, everything we're about to say could fall flat in our faces. Because the game starts in half an hour and anything could happen. So we're not going to go into it too deeply in case we say some madness that you lot then slap back in our faces afterwards. But the next game up in about half an hour is Barbados Royals versus St. Kitts and Nevis Patriots. And I see loads of you in the comments talking about, I think Contact must be a Barbados fan. He's ICSE says, sorry, I'm bringing these comments up, says a slow pitch is going to be good for Barbados. He's Contact says hopefully Bishop and Linnott play. I think Linnott's in the was he not in the Blast? Is he even going to be there for this?
No, he's going to play the Blast playoff tomorrow. So he's not.
Yeah, so Linnott's not even there.
Yeah.
Bishop, I don't think Bishop doesn't get in my team today, but maybe if Barbados have seen what's happened today, they change their lineup and he does get in the team. Yeah. I'm just going to throw these comments before I hand over to Static people. So then I see SE saying, what about the Barbados batting? And Contact says, and then I'm coming to you, Static. Contact says, I'm going with Phillips. Glenn Phillips, what a signing. Phillips, Charles, Hope, Mayers, Holder, Azam. Interesting that you've got him at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Where? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7? Is that 6? 6, 1, 2. Yeah, 6. Azam at 6. I'm not sure about that still. And then Pereira. Static, we don't want to go into this too long, so all I'm going to do is say, how would you line up the Royals team today?
No, I don't know. I said this last time when we were talking about the Tridents. I have no idea how they're going to line up. They have so many top order batsmen. They have so many all-rounders against. It's the same thing. But I would open with Phillips, Henry Jamaican. He's done well every time opening for Jamaica. So probably Phillips, Charles, Hope, Azam at 4, Mayers floating around at 5 somewhere, Holder floating around again. And then
it's weird, isn't it? It's see, I can even see from your expression, and my feelings are the same as yours. I do think Barbados have a good team this year, but the batting, like you said, when I kept looking at the team again and again and again, going, how does this work? How are they because technically, Static, both Mayers and Holder should come in the top 4 because Mayer's striking power, you have to take advantage of that at the top. Holder is a right-handed batsman for me, has to come 4, but if Hope's playing, Hope has to come in the top 3 because everywhere else in the team, I think he has a negative impact on the side. So it'll be interesting to see how they construct their side. And even CJ here is saying Reefer comes in, but I don't think Reefer even gets in the
I don't think he
side.
plays. But then you could argue Reefer plays instead of Hope. You drop Hope, and then you
What, Johnson
start.
Charles? Oh no, Phillips. Phillips would wicket keep.
Yeah, Phillips can keep, and
Yeah.
you take off that top order clogging. But they're not going to do that. No.
No, I don't see Reefer doesn't get my team, people. I'm sorry, I don't see it.
Yeah.
Certainly not today, anyways. And then, of course, sorry, contact. Yes, I know. I know. Okay, I know. But let's wait till Jamaica play. Let's wait till Jamaica play tomorrow, and I can cuss them out properly. St. Kitts. A lot of people static have St. Kitts as the most likely challengers.
Yeah.
Obviously, TKR lost today, but lots of people have St. Kitts as the most likely challengers. Personally, I have St. Lucia, but that's another conversation.
No, yeah.
The St. Kitts team, bravo. Who signed today? Naseem Shah signed today, or Gale, Lewis, Cottrell, Fabian.
Rutherford.
Rutherford, I forgot about. Oh my god, I forgot about Rutherford. Now, even though St. Kitts lost even better players in terms of Norkia and so on and so forth, that team they've got is stacked. What do you think about the St. Kitts? But you haven't told me really what you think about the St. Kitts side. What's your views on them?
Their batting is probably the best in the league. It's better than TKR, better than Barbados, whoever you're looking at. Gale, Lewis. That's the top order setup. And then they have Rutherford for the middle overs, Fabian, Bravo to finish. So the only concern is Fabian's probably coming into the CPL, Gale's coming into the CPL after 1 year's break. But it's not going to matter because they're proper superstar batting lineup. So if the pitch plays decently under lights, we spoke about that earlier. If it's even somewhat flat, I think they could get to 180, 200.
Yeah.
Might fall flat on my face, but if they bat first, the pitch is playing well, I think they could get to that score. And then their bowling is slightly weaker without Hasaranga, Nokia pulling out. But they still have Bravo, they still have Cottrell. If Naseem Shah plays, he's there. They have Fawad Ahmed, who's transferred from TKR.
Yes.
So, and then there's Fabian. Fabian's bowling is improved as well. So I honestly think they have all bases covered.
A lot of Caribbean fans are going to see Van Meekeren for the first time. Even I don't really know anything about him because I don't watch enough cricket that he's played. What as Caribbean fans, what should we be looking out for with Van Meekeren if he plays?
Yeah, I don't think he's going to play, but if he does, he's probably more of a variation bowler, Yorker bowler. So probably someone who's going to bowl more towards the depth. So he could probably benefit working with Bravo for the CPL, honestly.
Well, Contact has given us the heads up and we're about to get out of here. So brilliant Contact. Contactor says that Barbados have won the toss and they have chosen to field first, which is interesting. I will, once we're off, I'm going to look into that more. I don't know if that's about Dew. I don't know if they're doing what Pollard did, which is like, it's better to chase. I'd like to think they saw what happened today. Maybe they think the St. Kitts bowling won't be able to hold up in the second half, but it's going to be interesting. But like I say, Static and I aren't going to talk too much on this game tonight. We're just going to see what happens then tomorrow when we jump back in it tomorrow, or whenever we're next back in on this. We'll talk about the evening game and the morning game together. But ladies and gents, thank you for everyone. Nathan, I did see your final comment there, just in case you're like, why didn't anyone see me? But thank you to everyone who logged on with us today. Tell a friend, tell people, anyone who's into CPL, let them know. You can follow Carib Cricket at the app, which is on the screen. Static's handle is in the description below on YouTube, so do go and give him a follow as well for all of your analysis and stats around anything to do with T20 cricket. We're going to try and keep this going throughout the whole tournament, so lock in. We're calling it late nights at Warner Park. This is just the beginning. Thank you everyone for tuning in today, and hopefully see you tomorrow. Peace.